Do you know who witches are? Do you know that in ancient times witches were treated in a special way? Have you heard that every full moon witches gather for their Sabbath? Watch the video to the end and you will learn everything about witches and their witchcraft as well as whether they exist today. Are you ready? Nothing, look closely into my magic ball and let's go in the ancient legends of different peoples of the world, be it Europe, Asia, America or Russia. You can find mention of witches. The history of witches goes back to the distant past and is full of mysteries and ambiguities. In Africa, shamanism is closely connected with the daily life of local residents. Even with the advent of civilization, they did not lose faith in their healers. African healers, for thousands of years, helped to treat cattle, take care of children, and cast a spell. For Africans, a doctor and a shaman are almost one, and also such people were treated with caution. They are not always respected, but also did not disturb without reasoning. Russes, before the adoption of Christianity, Volkafis and witches were deeply respected, considering them wise advisors and healers in view of the fact that they did not often give advice to strangers, protected the weak, helped women during childbirth, and even controlled the weather. However, with the arrival of European traditions on Russian soil, the attitude towards sorcerers changed. They began to be persecuted and destroyed, as it happened in Europe during the Inquisition. Then 1,000 innocent women were burned at the stake, accused of having relations with the devil. A denunciation from a neighbor was enough for a public execution to take place a few days later. Lonely, beautiful girls with red hair could be killed without trial or investigation. The fear of witches in Europe was so great that it led to mass reprisals in Europe over time. Magical traditions became known throughout the world, despite the fact that in the past, sorcerers were persecuted in Japan. Witches were called omido or omidi. They were honored and respected. Political figures did not take serious steps, did not build new buildings, and did not enter into marriages without consulting a samdon like European countries. In Japan, witches have always been powerful, positive characters. They hid under the masks of priestesses, sorceresses, healers, and healers. But this did not affect people's attitudes towards them. Society's interest in sorceresses was as great at all times as was the fear of them. The word witch for many causes some kind of superstitious fear and rejection. However, initially, it had a completely different meaning. If you delve into the etymology, then a witch consists of two parts, to know and to know, and mother woman. It turns out that a witch is a wise woman, possessing knowledge. There is a version that midwives were previously called that healers and healer. A witch can get along equally with two worlds, the world of people and the world of spirits. She sees both worlds equally well, takes knowledge and power from the outside, and uses them for the benefit of all living things. But not all witches were kind. Some of them hated people for their views and harmed them. A witch is a woman, which is under the influence of a certain entity from the world of spirits, which was once a person. Most often it manifested itself in a female body and possessed strong magical abilities. Such a creature either does not want or does not have permission to incarnate in a human body. Connection with this spirit is transmitted to the breed of ancestral witches or accidentally suitable. For this young woman, from a dying witch-trained or involuntary witches, a natural-born witch belongs to the category of witches to whom paranormal abilities are passed on by inheritance. After one generation, a trained witch was considered a representative of that category of witches who were trained by other more powerful witches or studied magic on their own from books. Since ancient times, witches have been divided into two categories: those who received the gift from birth and those who acquired it through hard work, training, and curiosity. A natural-born sorceress is born into a family where a row is born 7 girls, or is born illegitimately in the 3rd generation. In addition, she can be the daughter of a famous witch. Europeans believed that if a pregnant woman accidentally swallows a piece of coal while cooking in the last month of pregnancy, then her child will be born with the gift of witchcraft. It was also believed that children born at the cost of the mother's life also have supernatural powers, especially religious. Christian women did not leave the house when their belly was already visible under the dress, because they believed that the child could be cursed and he would become a sorcerer upon reaching adulthood. The second type of witches appeared when a girl or a young woman of her own free will became an apprentice of an experienced witcher. Natural-born sorceress was considered stronger and more powerful, to repair the harm caused, which was beyond the power of one who studied during life in general. There are as many different types of witches as there are witches themselves. I will tell you more about the three most famous. Green Witch is one who prefers to be in harmony with nature and everything connected with it. He may have a strong attraction to growing her own herbs, performing magical rituals outdoors, and connecting with the energy of the earth in their studies. Green witches pay great attention to studying herbs, essential oil tinctures and potions. They are often keen on collecting books about wildlife and spend a lot of time studying the plant kingdom. Green witches often celebrate the Wheel of the Year, which consists of 8 Sabbaths dedicated to the changing of the seasons. Their rituals may include giving thanks to the earth celebration of the harvest or honoring the spirits of nature in their magical practice. Green witches use tools that they have made themselves or received from nature, wands from fallen branches, altar cloths dyed with plant dye, stones and crystals, personally collected path of the Green Witch. Difficult, not everyone can learn to listen and hear nature, and most importantly, respect it and treat it with deep reverence. Unlike stereotypical ideas, a white witch does not fly on a broom, does not attend a Sabbath, and does not perform other similar actions. She does not harm people, does not cast a spell, does not harm young couples who want to have children, and does not separate lovers. A white witch uses only the light side of her abilities, developing them to the highest levels. He actively opposes any evil, especially caused by magical means. For traditional witches, a white witch is an apostate betraying ancient traditions. White witches are valued and respected. People turn to them for help. They live an ordinary life, create families, raise children, and enjoy female happiness, which is rare among traditional witches. White witches can heal diseases, especially those caused by black magic. They remove damage, the evil eye, love spell, discord, and other negative effects, especially if they were induced by traditional witches. White witches feel the hidden power of stone, amulets and talismans, and with appropriate training can successfully use them. A black or dark witch is one who owns forbidden types of witchcraft and uses black magic for her own purposes. She strives for power and is ready to manipulate people for her own benefit. The witchcraft is aimed at subordinating others to her will. A dark witch experiences satisfaction from inducing damage and curses, and an innocent person can become her victim. It is not easy to recognize a black witch because she hides her craft and acts secretly. However, being near her, you can feel an atmosphere of fear and anxiety. Words drive you into a cage. A black witch can drain a specific smell and has a heavy, piercing, cold look. She is like a vampire, feeds on someone else's energy. Plants wither next to her, and animals can get sick or die. According to European mythology, Sabbath is a solemn meeting of witches which takes place at night, and where various rituals take place, accompanied by revelry. Most often Sabbaths were held on hills or mountains. Sometimes the action took place in a large clearing, in the middle of the forest, or in a cave. The most important thing is that the place is secluded, but with a lot of space. Finding a secret meeting place was not easy. Therefore, all the initiates agreed in advance. However, It also happened that a completely random person could wander into the Sabbath who happened to be nearby at the wrong time, meeting place for Slavic witches. Traditionally, Bald Mountain was considered near Kiev. The action began at night and ended at dawn. Sabbaths took place several times a year at Christmas. At Easter at Trinity, or on the night of Ivan Kupalat, the Annunciation in Europe and America, All Saints' Day was added in 1446. The first mention of the Sabbath appears just during the period of the Inquisition or witch hunt, just at this time. The first trials of witches began. At the same time, terrible rumors began to spread in society about the existence of large groups of witches who fly away in the dead of night to meet the devil. December 5th, 1480, the fourth year Pope Innocent VII issued a bull with all the strength of his soul. This became the starting point in the witch hunt in Europe, and after the publication of the treatise on demonology, The Hammer of the Witches in 1487, persecutions become massive. The book becomes a real criminal code on which all the judges of that time relied, that there was something special about it. The authors did a great job quoting priests and theologians. They proved that witches and witchcraft really exist, and as a way to solve the problem, they recommended torture and burning at the stake. The peak of the witch hunt came in the 16th and 17th centuries. Endless wars were going on in Europe. One political era was replacing another. The church was on the verge of decline. And in all this, they saw only one reason: the devil, who quickly burst into people's lives and began to impose his own rules. Most persecution occurred in France, Switzerland, and Germany. During the Reformation and division of society into Catholics and Protestants, when under cover of the noise, they caught everyone who was in any way objectionable and attributed to him a connection with the devil. In Catholic Spain, the Inquisition raged as never before. However, there were noticeably fewer witch trials there. The witch hunt turned out to be a very convenient opportunity to settle score with someone who stood in your way, including in the political arena, Russia and Scandinavia. The witchcraft hysteria bypassed, although sometimes similar trials took place there. Perhaps this was due to a different understanding of the essence of a witch. According to the most minimal estimates, a huge number of people became victims of the Inquisition, counting in the tens of one. Who of them was really connected with the devil and who just accidentally got into this meat grinder? Now we will never know. Speaking of witches, one cannot help but mention this terrible process. In 1629, English Puritan colonists founded the small town of Salem, Massachusetts. Puritans were very religious people, and any disaster, whether it was a crop failure, mass diseases, Indian attacks, were considered manifestations of the devil. He was so serious that in 1641 the death penalty was legalized, including for communication with dark forces. It all started with the fact that several girls fell ill with an unknown disease. Neither doctors nor prayers could cure it. And then a doctor named William Grix announced that there was exactly the same case in Boston. As it turned out, the cause of the unknown disease was nothing other than witchcraft. The statement was made on 8/2/1692. Devout residents of Salem immediately went in search of the one who had cast a spell on the girls and found a black slave named Tituba brought to America from Barbados. The girls said that more than once heard of a slave about witchcraft. The fate of Tuba was sealed. By autumn, 11 people were executed in Solomon charges of having connections with the devil. 22/1692, the last court hearing took place, after which 8 witches were hanged. They were the last in May 1693. The governor of Massachusetts pardoned those who were also accused of witchcraft, and 4 years later, in 1697, the trial was completely recognized as illegal, and they apologized to the victims, which they still do. As for when the witch hunt ended, it happened in the 18th century, With the beginning of the Age of Enlightenment today, many are wondering, do witches exist in our time? Gradually, a new image is being formed in people's minds. A witch is no longer an evil old woman with a hooked nose, not a villain who is ready to send anyone to the next world for money. Modern image witches, based on ancient ideas about her, as a woman who has special abilities and knowledge. Witches of the past could predict the future, treat diseases, and communicate with spirits. They were connected with nature and used its powers for their own purposes. Witches in the modern world represent a new incarnation of ancient traditions. They continue to use the knowledge and abilities passed on to them by their predecessors, but at the same time adapt them to modern conditions. Most modern witches are representatives of witch and pagan movements in the USA and Great Britain's century. And paganism are practices based on the worship of nature and the belief in the equality of male and female forces in the universe. The divine principle is present everywhere in these teachings. Some witches believe in reincarnation, afterlife and karma, but do not recognize the concepts of sin, heaven and hell. One revere Athena or Isidue, others worship specific individuals. An important part of the life of modern witches is the Wheel of the Year, annual cycle of 8 seasonal holidays, called Sabbath. Sabbaths are important astrological events such as solstices and equinoxes. Modern witches use their knowledge and abilities to help people rather than harm. They strive for harmony with nature and the world around them, as well as for the development of their internal energy. To believe in whether witches existed before and whether they exist now is everyone's personal business. I can only say with confidence that there are many things happening in the world that are beyond our minds. Perhaps witches came to our world in order to become our guides into the unknown.